Welcome into episode 27 of Uncaged Sports Talk. Here on today's episode, I'm not even gonna go through a little rundown like that. I'm taking some advice from a friend. I was gonna go through a little rundown, which I haven't done in a while, but gotta remember and just go with the flow. So first off on today's show, I want to get into the Eagles' Kellen Moore hire. Before we get into conference championship weekend, I just want to give my quick thoughts on the Kellen Moore hire. So over the weekend, if you haven't heard yet, the over last weekend, the Eagles hired Kellen Moore, the Chargers offensive coordinator, was the Cowboys offensive coordinator 2 years for the year prior and 2 years before that. Dak Dak had his worst year with Kellen Moore. Now he had improved, but he also had his worst year with Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator. That makes me a little iffy about the Kellen Moore hire. And then he goes to LA. I granted in LA he was dealt a bad hand with injuries from Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, just a bunch of injuries. But Justin Herbert goes and has the worst year of his career. Granted, Herbert got hurt, but Dak had the worst year of his career. Then Herbert goes and has a really bad year. Back to back seasons. That makes me a little iffy. The one thing that makes me a little excited about it, though, is he seems to be highly regarded by a bunch of people. He seems to be highly regarded by a bunch of people around the NFL. And he was getting head coaching interviews just 2 years ago. He was getting head coaching interviews just 2 years ago. The Eagles brought him in for a head coaching interview just 2 years ago. So he's highly regarded around the NFL. But all people around the NFL have to say about him is positive things. All they say about Kellen Moore is positive things. So that makes me a little excited about what the future could bring with it. But to me, I'm in wait and see mode. You have to fix Jalen Hurts though. That's the number one order of business. You have to fix Jalen Hurts. No ifs, ands, or buts. Getting Jalen Hurts fixed is the number one order of business. No, I don't think there's much to fix. I think a lot of it was scheme. Sorry if you can hear the helicopter in the background, but I think a lot of it was scheme. And I actually have some advanced stats to back that up. Advanced stats favor Jalen Hurts in this scenario. In terms of target separation, Jalen Hurts receivers were 54th in the league. But I'm going to bring up a bunch of advanced stats I saw over the weekend that I really liked. Pulling them up right now. Here we go. So Jalen Hurts. And don't forget, just 11 months ago, he almost outdueled Patrick Mahomes, maybe played better than him in the Super Bowl, the biggest game of Jalen Hurts' life. He outdueled maybe the second greatest quarterback of all time. And Mahomes is already up there. We'll get into that in a second. But he played just as well as him, if not better, just 11 months ago, which people tend to forget. But Jalen Hurts led the league in completion percentage from the pocket for the second year in a row, while being top 3 in yards per attempt from the pocket. He carried this part's quoted from Chris CJ 0504 on Twitter. And you can find these stats in other places. He carried the worst scheme in the league and was still elite by every advanced metric we have. Here's some of the stats. Some of these stats are provided by Shane Half, who has a lot of good insights, who shows a lot of good stats on the NFL. Here's some interesting stats on what Hurts had around him. Among 84 NFL wide receivers with 45 plus targets in 2023, Devontae Smith ranked 42nd out of 84 NFL wide receivers in average separation. AJ Brown ranked 71st per Next Gen Stats. Dallas Goedert ranked 26 of 28 tight ends. And these are guys who are top 10 at their positions. not getting open. He then goes on to say there's a reason Jalen Hurts had the second lowest expected completion percentage in the NFL. He also had the third highest completion percentage over expectation. That's just crazy. Crazy. It shows that the scheme was a huge part of why Hurts regressed this year. Was a huge part of why the team regressed as a whole late in the season. Some other stats about Jalen Hurts. He had 15 interceptions, which was third in the league. But with turnover-worthy plays, he only had 14 turnover-worthy plays, which ranked 21st. So he was unlucky compared to other QBs. And his turnover-worthy play percentage was 2.3%, which ranked 35th among quarterbacks. So he's in a good spot there with that. He was just unlucky with the turnovers. Sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. Look at Dak Prescott last year. Before he was unlucky. 15 picks, and then this year he goes and has under 10. Sometimes you're unlucky, sometimes you're lucky. The other stuff I was like stats like expected pass situations. Eagles had the most expected pass situations in the league, which shows not good game scripts for Jalen Hurts. Not a good game when a team knows the pass is coming, it makes it a lot harder to pass. That's football 101 basically. But those stats are just wild to me. It shows how bad the scheme was. You all probably remember the play against the Bucks where the Bucks were sending an all-out blitz. Eagles do a 4 verts against an all-out blitz. And you have two people run to the same spot on the field. Like, what? Not a single underneath route. But I'm excited. I'm excited. I want to see what they do in the offseason because I think they are closer than people think. They were just in the Super Bowl a year ago. The defense is going to be young next year. The offense is going to be the same, basically, but the defense is still going to be young. So you're going to have to overcome that. But you're still going to have people like Jalen Carter. You're still going to have people like Josh Sweat if he can get back to what he should be. Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat are going to be like the two oldest players on the defense besides for like Brandon Graham. Unless you bring back Fletcher for a year, but he's not going to be anything special. He's not going to be a game changer at this point in his career. The defense is going to be entirely different almost next year, which the offense is going to have to step up. If the offense steps up and carries the defense and the young corners that we're going to have out there, Eli Ricks, Keely Ringo step up, and our D-line gets back to what they should be and how they should produce, Eagles can get to where they want to go. If Jalen Hurts gets close back to form, Eagles can get to where they want to go. And I think he can. I believe fully in Jalen Hurts. I'm gonna move into the stuff that happened this weekend in a second. But before we do that, I want to introduce a new segment to replace Luke's locks. I'm gonna do this segment in the middle of the show this week. It usually might be towards the end, but I like it in the middle this week because it can help me transition to the end of the show and talking about conference championship weekend. But on this day in sports history, February 1st, the American Basketball Association, the ABA, formed in 1967. The ABA eventually merged 9 years later with the NBA, and four teams remained and became NBA teams. The Dallas Chaparrals, I don't even know if that's how you say it, Chaparrals. I don't even know what that is. I tried looking it up, still had like really no clue. But they eventually became the San Antonio Spurs. The Indiana Pacers kept the same name. The Denver Larks, which is a bird, became the Denver Nuggets. The New York Nets eventually became the New Jersey Nets, and now they're the Brooklyn Nets. So they're back in New York. And I saw something interesting. The ABA was formed by George Mikan, a Hall of Fame center. I believe he actually played for the Spurs. And I believe people like Dr. J played in the ABA. And he was a highly prominent figure in the ABA. On the New York Nets, he was before he went to the Sixers. He was really good in the ABA. I thought that was really cool. And another thing on this day in sports history, Tom Brady officially retired 1 year ago today on February 1st in 2023. Tom Brady, the GOAT, the number one quarterback of all time, 7 Super Bowl rings, never, most likely never will be touched. I'm not going to say never because we're witnessing something and someone right now who might be able to get close the way it's looking so far in his career. But Tom Brady, the GOAT, officially retired 1 year ago. Now that helps me pivot into Patrick Mahomes, someone who might be able to catch him eventually, someone who might already be the number 2 quarterback of all time in NFL. I know Joe Montana, blah, blah, blah. Patrick Mahomes has been to 6 AFC championships. He's only been a starter for 6 years. 4 Super Bowls and potentially winning 3 Super Bowls. Winning a Super Bowl every other year of your career to start, that is Brady. That's Brady and the Patriots. Every single year of his career, the Chiefs has been a top 4 team. And 4 out of the 6 years, they've been a top 2 team. At least a top 2 team. And 2, maybe 3 out of the 6 years, they've been the best team in all of football. An insane start to a career. If he wins this Super Bowl, he's only 6 years into his career. He might have a chance to get to 5 Super Bowls, maybe 6. If he gets to 7 somehow, I'll be shocked. But if he gets to 7, then you start putting him in the GOAT. You start making him. You start having a debate about the GOAT. You start having a Jordan LeBron type of debate. I think the one thing that'll be different about that, though, Brady and Belichick had the Spygate and all, but when they went head to head, Brady beat Mahomes in the Super Bowl and in an AFC Championship game. In the playoffs, Tom Brady was undefeated against Patrick Mahomes. Granted, it was only 2 games, and it was in Patrick Mahomes' first 3 years. 2 of his first 3 years. So if Mahomes, it's crazier that we're even mentioning him maybe tying Brady somehow, some way in Super Bowl rings one day. But he might already have 3 in 6 years, which is just unheard of. I think Brady would still get the edge because he beat him in a Super Bowl. If we eventually get to that discussion 10 years from now, which at this rate, 10 years from now, that'll be 4 more Super Bowls, 5 more Super Bowls for Patrick Mahomes. At the rate that they're on so far, 4 to 5 Super Bowls for Mahomes. That would be just insane if he gets to 7. You went literally from Tom Brady and the Patriots right to Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes is that guy right now. No ifs, ands, or buts. He's the best quarterback in all of football. It's Patrick Mahomes and everyone else. It's literally Patrick Mahomes and everyone else. Like, there's no shame in the Ravens losing to him. The problem the Ravens had, though, I'll talk about that right now a little bit. They're the type, I can't even say it about the Niners anymore, but they're the type of team that they want to lead. They've usually with Lamar Jackson at quarterback been a run-heavy team. And when you're a run-heavy team, if you're behind in a game, you're in trouble. And it's shown in Lamar's playoff career. He has 2 playoff wins against Ryan Tannehill and a rookie quarterback for the Houston Texans, CJ Stroud. He has 2 playoff wins. 2. Otherwise, his teams have just choked. Otherwise, it's been choke jobs. Coming up small. That pick in the end zone, that was horrible. That was a horrible play. Threw it in the triple coverage. He took it. They wound up completing a play, but it was like 3rd and 1. He scrambles outside. I don't know if you guys remember this, but he scrambles outside. He looks, he looks, he looks, he stands there, he looks, he looks. He gets sacked. Instead, you're out of the pocket. Throw it away. You had all the time in the world. You could have thrown it away on a 3rd and 1. Live to fight another day. Go get a QB sneak. Go get 1 yard. Instead, you took a sack and then you made it that much harder and you needed to get 3 yards. Like what? Like that's just idiotic, stupid football. Lamar with Lamar Jackson, you need a lead in the playoffs because then you can run the ball, you can get into what you like to do well, you can play fast, and it utilizes Lamar Jackson's skill set the best. When you fell behind against the Chiefs defense and Patrick Mahomes, they were going to make you pay. And they only scored 17 points. It was right there for the taking for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. But Lamar Jackson came up small. Horrible plays by Lamar Jackson wound up costing them overall in the end. They had all the penalties, which they shot themselves in the foot that way too. But just brutal from the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. You're at home and you choke. But like I said, there's no shame in losing to Patrick Mahomes. Someone I think is already, if he wins the Super Bowl in 2 weeks, I think he solidifies himself as the second best quarterback of all time. But he's already top 3. I think he's number 2. If he wins the Super Bowl on Sunday or next Sunday, I think he solidifies himself as number 2 at that point. Like no debate. There's no shame in losing to that guy. There is a shame in being the reason your team lost, though. And him only scoring 17 points. He only scores 17 points. You got to take advantage of that if you want to beat him. You got to take advantage. If he's only scoring 17 points, you're not going to get many times where he's only scoring 17 points in a playoff game. He's 14-3 in his career in the playoffs. That's unheard of. I think he has like 42 total touchdowns, 44 total playoff touchdowns, 7 interceptions, only 7 interceptions, and like 4,800 passing yards. That's unheard of. You get him at only having 17 points, you better take advantage of it. And Lamar Jackson and the Ravens were not able to. Now for the NFC side of things. Please, Patrick, beat the Niners in 2 weeks. Do what Dan Campbell and the Lions almost did. They came up small, but choked. They had the game in the bag. They had a 17-point lead, blew it. Niners run up 10. Stupid decisions by Dan Campbell. I get going for it maybe once. But then you go I get maybe going for it the first time, but then you go for it a second time. Sometimes you have to do the smart thing. I get being gutsy. Okay, you did it once. Okay, it didn't work. You can live with that. But then you do this. You make the same mistake twice. You know the definition of insane? Doing the same thing over and over again. You think you would have learned from the Dallas Detroit game debacle, where you went for it 3 times and it cost you. You went for it 3 times instead of taking a field goal and going to overtime, and it cost you. And you think you would have learned from not getting it earlier in the game, not converting the 4th down earlier in the game. And then you go down and you do, or it's a tie game, I think, and he made the same mistake. Yeah, tie game, and you make the same mistake. You think you would learn. Like, sometimes you got to make a decision that's smart. And stop trying to be so smart. Stop trying to be a know-it-all. Stop trying to act like you know everything. Stop trying to be Mr. Aggressive, Mr. Ballsy. I made a good analogy. Kind of. I kind of Flick stole it, but I also tweaked it a little. Dan Campbell is like a degenerate gambler that cost his team. He was a fiend. He was a fiend to go for it on fourth down. Degenerate gambler, too good, or not too good, too much of a degenerate to get out of his own way and know when to be smart and take a field goal. Instead, you repeat the same mistakes, and it cost you your season. Now, hats off. I told people I'll give them their props on this podcast. Hats off to Brock Purdy and the Niners. Brock Purdy keeps proving me wrong. Hats off to him. As much as I hate it, hats off to the Niners. They deserve that win. Hats off to Kyle Shanahan and the Niners. Now I hope they choke again. But so far they've been making me eat my words. I hope Kyle Shanahan chokes yet again. He's choked in us in 2 Super Bowls, 2 NFC championship games. I hope he chokes again. But they've been making me eat my words. Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. I still think he's like 9th in the NFL, but he's been making me eat my words. Hats off to Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan. They deserve it. Not well, they don't. I wouldn't say they deserve it, but they're the best team in football this year. They are the best team in football this year. I am gonna be predicting them to win the Super Bowl most likely next week when I make my Super Bowl predictions. But the Niners are the best team in football right now this year. Hats off to them. Now I hate them because all they did for a year was whine and whine and whine and whine. But they deserve it this year. They're the best team by a mile this year in the NFC. Beat every single NFC playoff team. That'll lead me into my power rankings, though, as we get close to wrapping this show up, as we get close to wrapping up episode 27. Coming in at number 5, there's no change, the Bills. Coming in at number 4, the Lions, no change there. As I already mentioned with them, Dan Campbell was too stupid and stubborn to get out of his own way. Too much of a degenerate gambler wanting to take a chance to get out of his own way and actually be smart and kick a field goal to give your team at least a chance to go to overtime. They come in at number 4. Ravens coming at number 3. Ravens dropped 2 spots. Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. Same story basically with Lamar Jackson. Showed up again. The same problem showed up again. Lamar Jackson in the playoffs doesn't really mix well, at least so far in his career. The Chiefs coming at number 2. Already really touched on them, and I've been saying it for weeks about them. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. It's Patriots-esque. Not Patriots-esque. It is Patriots 2.0. They basically coasted through the regular season. Got to the first playoff game, people were picking the Dolphins, including me, against the spread. I was even picking the Dolphins against the spread. What do the Chiefs do? Blow them out, prove everyone wrong. Against the Bills, people picking against the Chiefs. People were picking the Bills mostly. What do the Chiefs do? They go on the road to Buffalo and beat Buffalo. Then everyone's picking the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl. What do the Chiefs do? They prove everyone wrong yet again, a third straight week, and head to the Super Bowl for the 4th time in 6 years. In the 4 out of 6 years. That's insane. They're Patriots 2.0. They coast through the regular season. You doubt them, and they just prove you wrong. They become the team you do not bet against whatsoever. Now, I'm probably going to do the exact opposite of what I just said next week. But their team, if you bet against them, you're more likely than not at this point losing your money. You do not bet against the Chiefs at this point. It's literally Patriots 2.0. And coming in at number 1, I hate it, but they deserve their flowers. The San Francisco 49ers. I already mentioned why. They're a dominant team. Not much more that needs to be said. They deserve their flowers. K- Kyle Shanahan was finally able to come back the last 2 weeks from a big deficit this past week, and came back the last 2 weeks. They deserve their flowers. Not gonna hate on them, even though I want to. Maybe I'll mess with my guest next week if I have him on, which I hope to. I'm gonna have to do 2 episodes so I can fit him in for an episode and talk about the Super Bowl. He's a Niners fan, but Niners coming at number one. No fans or buts about that. Before we wrap up, I want to let you all know to head and visit my friend Dane the Man Stanley at Sheridan Nissan. Well, they will hook you up with a new car. Just let them know Luke Sarankin on Cage Sports Talk sent you. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe on all of our platforms. It is greatly appreciated. And comment on all of our platforms. It is greatly appreciated. Remember to tune in next week for episode 28 and a Super Bowl preview as we gear up for Super Bowl rematch between the Chiefs and the Niners.